Hello, my name's Julia Mennell from Spark Coaching and Training, and this is the second of 3 recordings on how to handle tricky coaching clients. So in the first video, we looked at the disengaged coachee, and in this second video, we're going to look at the talkative coachee. And then in the third and final one, we'll have a look at the defensive coachee. So let's have a think about the talkative coachee. So you can see how they fit in there in terms of challenges. And I've picked those 3 because those are the most common that we get in coaching. Obviously, there's lots of other types of challenging behavior, and that's important to know because they're not challenging coachees, it's not tricky coachees, it's actually tricky behavior that you're having to deal with. We can all be difficult on certain days, so that's always a good perspective to keep in mind. So let's have a think about the over talkative coachee, who appears very animated and seems like an ideal client, but sometimes the talking can get a little bit out of hand. So as per the other video, we will focus on 3 key areas. First of all, what's really going on here? What are the traps for coaches, and how do we make it work when we're actually coaching these people? So let's start first with what's really going on here. And I guess the first thing to think about is your coachee talking so much because they're actually very nervous? And if it's the first session, that could well be the issue here, because people, often are quite nervous about starting a new relationship. What's this all going to be about? We don't know what they've been told by perhaps the commissioners of coaching. So if they are nervous, look out for any body language, and you should be able to spot the twitching leg, the tapping foot, the tapping fingers, clicking their pen, all the things that as a good coach you will be noticing there. And it should calm down as time goes on. They may stop talking less speed in their talking, and actually it may resolve itself. If not, your question then is, actually, are they always like this? So the problem with the talkative coachee is that they can look like an ideal client, because they're motivated, they're very engaged. But the problem can be that they're in an almost like a world of their own. It's an internal closed loop system. So it's almost as if you're not even in the room with them. And does the talking sound rehearsed? Do you feel like this is a story they've retold many, many times, and nothing new is emerging? So sometimes people use talking as a way of distracting themselves from not thinking, not having to think, not having to reflect. So if we say that coaching should be a conversation that you've never had before, then actually how much are they getting from retelling this story that they've possibly retold before? So they're talking maybe excluding you, and you don't feel like you're sort of part of a relationship at that point. The other thing as well is that it's continually reinforcing behaviour that doesn't let anything new in, of course, because there's no space for anything to come in. So that's really what's going on underneath. But what might be the traps for coaches with a talkative coachee? Well, the biggest trap is sitting back and waiting passively for them to draw breath so you can make your intervention or come in with your killer question And sometimes with the talkative coachee, that ain't going to happen. So you can fall into the trap of thinking, oh, they're getting something from this because they're talking. You might think that they're reflecting while they're talking, and the insight will emerge from this. Because we know, don't we, as coaches, that people will often say, oh my goodness, talking this out loud is just so beneficial. And sometimes that's all that's needed. You know, the adage that attention is curative. So that can be a real danger, that you think they're actually reflecting. And for some coaches, that's not actually happening. So you may think actually the insight is going to emerge. Reactive responding can occur when you feel like you've got to jump in at some point and interrupt them. So you may just grab hold of any opportunity that you get to dive in, and it actually may not be the best time, or you may ask a question and then actually it just stimulates them to talk even more. And particularly if you ask an open question, it could well be that then they go off down another rabbit hole. So sometimes that may be a problem, that you find that yourself pulled in then to, oh my goodness, that question's kicked off another line of talking for the next 15 minutes and you can't get in. So how do we make it work with talkative coachees? Well, one of the first things that you can do, particularly if, say you've seen this in the first session, it doesn't calm down, and you're into session 2, session 3, it's still a problem, then you need to give feedback on the behaviour. And that is the job of a coach. You know, that's part of the core skill. I think it's particularly important if the objectives of your coachee are connected to this. So do they have some objectives here that have been set by someone else, like a sponsor, line manager, HR manager, that is about communication skills, for instance? Is this already an issue that they are bringing to coaching anyway? In which case, then you can legitimately give feedback on that, and check out with them, you know, how much does this happen in the workplace? Have they had feedback before from other people, that other people feel that they talk a lot and that it's difficult to break through? So I find that with clients who perhaps are working on communication issues, videoing them is a great opportunity to get them to actually see what that's like to be on the receiving end, so they can see themselves talking, but they can also see what's happening for you. And, you know, asking those empathetic questions is like, you know, what is it like to be, do you think, the other person on the receiving end of all this talking? So that's a great opportunity for you to give people feedback. The other thing that you can do is you can disrupt with surprise or creative tools. So, you know, every coach has got some tools in their toolbox. You could use coaching cards or something that creates some somatic work, get them up out of their chair. A lot of people think coaching is just about talking, and obviously we're used to the phrase talking therapies, but with something like a talkative coachee, you want them to talk less, not more. So getting them up, working with a model where they can actually stand in the model on the floor, you know, lay something out on the floor, will take them out of their own heads and disrupt that line of speaking. Disrupting with surprise can sometimes work if there's no way of breaking in at all. So I had a client that talked a lot and went round and round in circles. It was a circular conversation. And on one occasion, I just got up out of my chair and just walked over to the window. And his voice is still going, but he's still talking as he's following me to the window. And then his voice started to drift off like one of those wind-up toys where the where the wind mechanism is wound down. And eventually he stopped because his brain delivered the message that said, hang on a minute, what's she doing? Why has she gone over there? So that's an opportunity then for you to take more control of the conversation. You can also make them do some paraphrasing. We know that a core skill for coaches is to do paraphrasing and reflecting back. But that can sometimes encourage them to talk some more once you've done the paraphrasing. Get them to do the paraphrasing and the reflecting back, because then that forces them to stop, really think about what they've just said, and to draw it together in a summary. You need to control that quite tightly, because they could actually go down another rabbit hole with that. That actually might help. And also you can ask the question, out of everything you've just talked about in the last 30 minutes, what's the most important? What connects to why are we here? And then finally, asking talkative coaches to do some writing during the session. Ask them to just take a minute to pause, jot down some notes, so that you are forcing them to take a break. And there are lots of reflective writing exercises where you can actually control that. So give them 3 minutes to write down their thoughts, and then another 2 minutes with some sort of prefix ahead of it. So what I notice now is ... and ask them to write for another 2 minutes on that, and then write for a 1 minute on what they are now thinking that new insights might have emerged, or what they're now thinking about where they need to go next. Anything that really sort of creates that pause. So those are some tips toward working with talkative coachee. If you'd like to click on to third video, which will look at how do you work with a defensive coachee, that will be in part 3. So see you there.